Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen, Chris Mitherman producing behind the scenes. I'm Dave Holcomb. We have another fun free agency episode today. We want to make you a part of the show. Send us your questions, even some topics that you'd like us to discuss. Kind of open-ended show today. We do have a few topics we want to get to. Calais Campbell visited the Falcons this week. We'll discuss if he's a fit for Atlanta's defense. We also want to get to a topic that a couple weeks ago was a really hot button issue in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers. We kind of didn't have time for it early in free agency, so we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers' trade rumors to the New York Jets and some streaming news in the NFL, which we always like to talk about. Where to watch the NFL games and whatnot, and some pretty big news with that coming out this week.
Yep.
Not necessarily where you're going to watch, but what teams are going to be playing at what primetime windows. So it should be another fun episode today. Give us a follow, a like on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching to support the channel. You could also follow us on Twitter at DM Holcomb, at TJ Pollen. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. There's another way you can promote the show or support the show. And downloading the app, once you sign up, get started, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So you get some free money, and then of course you're supporting us.
Absolutely, it's the way to do it, and especially with college basketball hitting the stretch run, we're gonna be down to the Final Four after this weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see. No number one seeds left in the tournament.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I was waiting for you to mention that. First time in history that no number one seeds even made the Elite Eight. That's pretty amazing.
What a Florida something.
Florida Atlantic?
Yeah, Florida Atlantic, right. They took care of Tennessee, and then Bama got knocked out. And I'm telling you, it's been a wild tournament. I guarantee you nobody has a bracket that includes any of this. So I doubt if anybody has a bracket that has two of the final Final Four teams in it. So it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's more and more upsets every year, which makes sense. I'm not a college basketball expert, but I just hear the experts do talk about, the AAU teams in high school and club ball and whatever, and there's just more competition than ever, and there's more great players, and that's good for the smaller schools because they get – there's a bigger pool of players. Again, not everybody can go to Kansas and Duke and all the blue bloods. So it helps out the smaller schools, and it's more even playing field when they play in the tournament. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a lot of fun. So, so if you want to get signed up for Prize Picks, get your first deposit there matched up to $100, and you can be a part of the final 8 teams in the tournament, and we still got a lot of fun to go there. We got baseball coming up. We have
Can you believe the season starts Thursday?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So
I know. I mean, the spring. I know it's still. I mean, it's not even spring where Chris is in Milwaukee, but it feels like this. Summer's is fastly approaching with baseball coming soon.
Absolutely. So plenty of options on Prize Picks. So yeah, support the show and we'll move on from there.
How about we work backwards this week? We'll do Falcons topics last. Oftentimes people aren't with us right at the top of the show anyway. We'll mix in Aaron Rodgers in the middle. Let's lead off with a topic I know is really dear to your heart, with the scheduling, the change the NFL announced this week. And I don't know all the details myself yet, but I think this could be potentially a big issue for someone like me as well. But Was it yesterday or the day before the NFL announced that Thursday games?
Yeah.
Is it starting this year or is it next year?
No, it'll be starting this season.
Starting this season,
yes.
Thursday night games are going to be a flex option for Amazon Prime.
Yeah, late in the season.
So when would that'll start? After Thanksgiving, after Halloween?
Let me look at would apply in weeks 14 through 17 this season, and through December 8th through December 31st. No, that's still this season. I guess then they'll refine it for next year, but right now you're looking weeks 14 through 17.
So it's not a major part of the NFL schedule. It's only the last month, but they're going to flex games that are based on, who has the best records at that time. What is the most interesting matchup? And I would imagine they're going to announce that matchup Sunday night after.
Yep.
Or I guess normally for Sunday night games, it's not the week of, it's like maybe a week before. So maybe you know that you're playing Thursday.
What they'll do is they'll pull a game out of the following Sunday night package and flex it into Thursday.
But it's usually 2 weeks ahead of time.
No, this isn't going to be 2 weeks ahead of time.
When are they going to pull it?
They don't say.
3 days ahead? They can't do that.
Actually, they don't say. They haven't gotten to that yet. Okay. It's just a matter of the fact that they are going to do this. And it's just exposes a hypocrisy of what the NFL is when they keep trying to emphasize that they are all for player safety. Right. We're all family. We're all player safety. This has nothing to do with player safety. This is all dollars, So, it doesn't say exactly when they will announce the poll, but you got to give it at least a couple of weeks. But still, what if a game becomes interesting, 1 week ahead of time? All of a sudden, you see a game that's going to be interesting that you might want on Amazon Prime. Don't tell me that the NFL won't pull it. Don't tell me it won't even be a week ahead. I know the players union will have something to say about it, but the players union's looking at the money too, because they're looking at salary cap. So, Amazon Prime says we're not into this after all. Well, then the players union's going to be looking at a depleted salary cap because there's one less market to sell these games to. So it becomes a very complicated affair. To me, I mean, they don't announce flex Sunday games until the week of, and I don't see any reason why the NFL would change that policy for a Thursday night game.
I don't think it's the week of, though. I believe it's the previous Sunday.
Okay, well.
If there's a game tomorrow night, let's say, NBC already knows what the next week's game is, even when it's flex. I believe they flex it 2 weeks ahead of time, which, I agree with you, though. It doesn't really matter when they announce the flexing. I guess it does to a certain extent. You don't want to know 4 days ahead of time that you're playing in 4 days instead of in 7 days. But I completely agree with you with the NFL hypocrisy about player safety. And the NFL account had a tweet that said they researched this and said that there is no connection between playing on a short week and injuries. And I mean,
which is a pile of crap.
Yeah.
Just complete crap. Let's see, I'm trying to, but see, the Thursday night games don't attract any. They bombed ever since the NFL has introduced them. So
I think this could be in reaction also to the fact that last year for like a 3 or 4 week stretch, the Thursday night games were awful. And I mean, that was just luck of the draw, though. I
well, it
mean,
seems like the Thursday night games are always awful.
they were particularly bad for like 3 or 4 weeks last year. You had that Colts Broncos game where there wasn't a touchdown scored. And it wasn't because they were playing on Thursday. Those two teams were bad. So, like, we didn't know that in week 5. But looking back at the season, of course, those two teams didn't play a high quality game. It didn't matter if it was Thursday night or Sunday afternoon. They were going to not play good football. They weren't good football teams. And I think the following week, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up your Bears, Tom, but the Bears played Washington. Those were Washington ended up being an okay team, but those were two also not good football teams record-wise at the end of the season. So when they played each other, of course, it wasn't high-quality football. And I think that's what I would say the problem is with Thursday night football. Not really when the game is played. It's the fact that the NFL wants to have all of these, primetime matchups because they want to make more money, want to raise the salary cap, all that stuff, which is great because I want to watch the games. Have a primetime game every day if you can. I'll watch it. But the issue is the more games that are on primetime, the more bad teams are going to be playing.
Yes, that's right. Plus, you have the agreement with the NFLPA that every team has to have a primetime slot at least once during the season.
Which I'm not really against, to be honest. I think it's nice that they give every team a chance. But really what that means is Sunday night gets all the best matchups. So a bad team isn't going to be on Sunday night. Nope. Monday night's all right. Usually good matchups. Sometimes you'll get a bad team, but an intriguing, juicy like matchup with a team that they don't like, or, a coach going to a city that he used to coach at or something like that. A story.
Yeah, there's always a background storyline.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And then Thursday night gets everything else. So, when you have that rule of everyone has to play in a primetime game, you're going to get, the Jaguars are good now. But for years, it was like Jaguars-Titans, week 15, Thursday night football, because these two teams, nobody really, they don't have big markets. No one really cares about them. They're not that good. And we have to have them play in a Thursday night game. So we'll put them, in a random Thursday in December playing each other. So we qualify for that rule of they're in a primetime game.
Right. Exactly. I looked up the rules as far as flexing. There has to be 12-day notice.
12-day notice. Okay.
12-day notice.
All right. That sounds right.
So, but how does that change for a Thursday night game? That's it's going to be interesting to see how they work it. But you're still going to end up having a team or teams playing more than one game in a 4-day stretch per season. You're not supposed to be playing more than one game on a short week per season. Again, because of player safety. But that's going to go out the window here. Based on if you're on a competitive team, well, hey, you pay the price. A couple of guys might get hurt, but we don't care. It's
and the player safety is definitely a concern for sure. But there's also the mental fatigue of these guys have a schedule. They
right.
have and we have it as NFL writers, to be honest. Sunday is the game. Monday we do the recap. Yes. Tuesday is the first day of the next practice.
Right.
In a way, we'll start looking towards the next week. Wednesday, is probably the first full day of practice. And then so we have that routine too. And Fridays is
walk through, and
Saturday is my off day. I don't really look at the news on Saturday.
Right.
We have our show, of course. But so they're creatures of habit that you're disrupting that. And I bring up, I could bring up the 2020 Steelers again. And I know a lot of people would say that team was the worst 11-0 team of all time, whatever. Okay, they probably shouldn't have been 11-0. But you don't think them having to originally they were going to play Thursday, and then they were going to play Sunday, and then they had to play Wednesday, and then the next week they played Tuesday, and then they played Sunday instead of Monday. You don't think that had an impact on
tore them apart?
Season?
Yeah, of course it did. I said it at the time. It tore them apart. Tore a couple of teams apart because the Baltimore Ravens refused to get vaccinated. And they ended up with a lot of COVID cases and a lot of games got scrambled. So, and the NFL decided they didn't want to use the extra week that they had built into the schedule to adjust schedules. And you're right. And that's the problem is NFL players, and NFL players will tell you this. They are creatures of habit. They would rather play on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And have it over with. And every week work that same way. Now, they've been doing Monday Night Football for over 50 years. They've gotten used to having a Monday night game.
Right.
But, the
one-day difference isn't a huge deal.
No.
Yeah.
So they've worked that into their thought process. But, yeah, it's a Thursday night game that it seems like NFL players always have the problem with because of the short week. And they haven't figured out how to cover that short week yet. And you do get less competitive football. You do not get a good enough as good a game because these players aren't ready to play. This is Thursday's the day of their practice. This is the day when normally they will do a full contact practice.
Yeah.
Friday they'll do their walkthrough. Well, no, now you're asking them to play in a game. So, and coaches are creatures of habit. So instead of, analyzing game film on a certain schedule, now you got to speed up that schedule. Because now we not only have to look at game film for the next Sunday night opponent, but we have to start looking at game film for Thursday night's opponent because that game's coming up right around the corner. So you end up doing that too.
And it's a kind of a cumulative effect is kind of what I would say about the Steelers back a few years ago. They weren't necessarily impacted by the first game that got moved. They still beat the Ravens in that game that moved like 2 or 3 times. But it was the next week that they seemed to be off their game quite a bit.
They couldn't adjust to coming off of a weird week and then coming back, trying to go back to a schedule. It threw them completely off.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something to watch late in the season. If a team is playing on a Thursday on short notice, 12 days, 10 days, whatever it is, maybe they play okay on that Thursday game. They win that game, but then how do they adjust coming back into the next game and getting back into their schedule when they'd probably had already done that earlier in the season?
Yes. I mean, teams take advantage because, teams have gotten to this point where they call it the long bye or the short bye week.
Yeah, mini bye.
The mini bye. So they've kind of begun, they've already started adjusting to seeing that Thursday night game on their schedule because they call it the mini bye. Then we will spend some time doing some adjustments to our team for the following game. We got 10 days to do this. Well, now all of a sudden, 12 days, ahead of time, you're finding out, well, this Sunday game's coming to Thursday night. And it's going to blow, it's going to just destroy a lot of routines. And it's going to make for worse games. That's the hell of it. It will make for worse games. You may put 2 marquee teams up there, 2 teams that are looking for a playoff spot, but you're really challenging them to play a competitive game because all of a sudden their schedule is so thrown out of whack that they'll go out and play on, you'll see the talent, talent will win out, but a lot of the preparation is going to be difficult. It's going to be tough to adjust to. And I think it's a terrible idea, but I think it's going to be voted in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We kind of said off the top of the show that it was a done deal. It's not. The NFL owners are going to vote on it next week, but we're anticipating that it's going to get a yes.
It's money.
Right.
It's all about money.
Well, Tom, one of the most exciting things for me the last few years with the NFL, I know maybe you're going to call me a dork, but when the schedule comes out, I love when the schedule comes out because I could, kind of plan. I like planning and I get to circle or highlight the games that I'm going to try and go to in different cities around the country and then maybe pair it with a baseball game in September in the same place or a hockey game or whatever. That's going to impact. This is going to impact that.
Yes, it will.
Because, even if you're local and you say, I want to see the Falcons late in the season play the Saints on, I don't have, the calendar in front of me and pull it up. Say the Falcons play the Saints on December 10th in Atlanta this year. And you say, when the schedule comes out in May, I want to see the Saints at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I'm getting tickets for that game. Yeah. Well, then the NFL decides, you know what? That game's not on December 10th. That game is on December 7th.
Right.
What do you do? That is, if you're local, it might not be a huge deal, but I mean, Thursday is obviously a work day. It's prime time. Maybe you wanted to take your little kid to the game. Now you're keeping them up on a school night, which you weren't planning to do. I get it's only one time, but what if you're a lot of fans, because I go to a few games every year and I travel for games. Yeah. And I see it in the airport. The other people are doing the same thing I do. There are lots of fans traveling in and out of NFL stadiums for these games. And now you're asking them to change their travel plans.
Yes, you are.
You've moved a game from Sunday to Thursday. And I would imagine when the schedule comes out in May, are they going to have a game in place for Thursday night in December each week? So then if you flex a game in.
I'm sure they'll have games in place. But the problem is that could change.
Right, exactly. So if you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna go to California for some warm weather in December, and I'm gonna see the Anaheim Ducks play Friday, and I'm gonna see the Chargers on Thursday. What if the Chargers now playing on Sunday?
Right. Well, you just eat that money. It too bad for you. Sucks to be you. That's pretty much what the NFL's saying.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is a very underrated negative of this that I'm sure lots of people won't be talking about because, the league isn't impacted and the players aren't impacted. And that's kind of the hierarchy. It's the league, then it's the players, and then it's the fans. And then it's
really, so I mean, it really affects Zozo because what if her, cat teams like the Bengals or somebody's playing Thursday night, and now all of a sudden, or Sunday, and now all of a sudden she has to watch one of her cat teams on Thursday night. That could be a rough thing for the little girl.
I need to talk to Zozo.
She needs your sleep.
Not rooting for the Bengals just because they're cats, But I think it's a shame that without fans, there's no NFL. There's no none of this. There's none of it.
The NFL pays lip service to the fans, and they always have.
Yeah.
They don't care. The way they look at it is the fans will come, the fans will watch, the ratings will be there. The advertising revenue will be there. We're always going to have networks who want the game, and that's it. The NFL takes the fans for granted. They do.
They do. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And this is another example of them taking for granted. And you're right. If you've already bought tickets for that game, you already have your flight and your hotel, you probably change your hotel for no cost or whatever. And you're going to have to pay the fee to change your flight, or I would, because I get the cheapest flight. So it's no change fee. You have a change fee. I guess other people, if they're freaking flyer mileage, maybe they can change for no cost and it's no big deal, but that wouldn't be the case.
You're setting up a special weekend and maybe you don't have the money. Maybe you've scratched together the money all year to set up this special weekend.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden that weekend is out the window because the time change and the schedule change.
Right. And I think that would be definitely a concern with a more local fan that, hey, I can only afford one game. I'm going to get tickets for one Falcons game this year. I want to see the Saints. I'm going to splurge to see the Saints, the rivalry, and then they move the day of the game.
Right. Exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see. I expect it to pass. I have no doubts it's going to pass. You're talking about money. You're talking about Amazon's money. And I'm sure that Amazon has this thing all set up to go through. Let's put it this way. It wouldn't be going to a vote if they didn't have the votes to pass it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pantera says Thursday night lineups suck except for the first game. Yeah, the first game usually
is the world champs against, yeah.
And they didn't play 3 days, 4 days ahead before that. So
right.
That helps as well. Atlanta Falcons fan says they should, I think he means do away with Thursday night games. And yeah, I enjoy it because it's football and it's something for me to watch, but I totally understand the players' safety concerns and all of that. And the quality of play is going to be lower. I think you just need to accept that if you're going to like Thursday night.
Right.
But definitely, I think you're looking at lower quality if you're flexing in matchups for that.
Yeah, you have to. So it's disappointing, but it shouldn't be surprising. I'm disappointed that I look at myself and I say, why the hell are you disappointed? You should know better, Tom. It's just, the minute it was mentioned, you knew what was going to happen. So don't be disappointed because that means you're expecting a lot out of the NFL, and you really shouldn't because they don't care about what you have to say.
Right. They don't care about the fans. They're not – we are not their top priority.
No, we are not.
We are not. So let's change gears to Aaron Rodgers, who – has made it very clear over the years he is his own top priority, and he has made it pretty clear that he wants to play for the New York Jets. And I want to hear your reaction to him because I mean I know it's a kind of a biased opinion, but I still think it would be fun to hear you. I'm not a big fan of Aaron Rodgers either, so I would like to hear you and maybe vent about him a little bit today. And I want to hear the comments from our listeners as well, your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers potentially joining the Jets. It kind of looks like it's going to happen, and we're just waiting for it to happen. Just kind of determining what the compensation to Green Bay is going to be.
Yes.
But he's probably going to be playing for the Jets and has made it clear that's what he would prefer. And he went into that, what did he call it? The dark room, the cave, or whatever.
Whatever, right? Yeah, went into the dark and meditated and
it sounded like he was leaning towards retirement before the dark room, and then the dark room cave happened, and then he came out and said, "I wanted to change shades of green and go to the Jets." So it's just kind of been a weird situation. Can you ever recall, a situation in the NFL where a player says, I want to play for a different team next season, but yet we have to wait several weeks for a trade to happen?
It's been a while. I'm not going to say it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
This has been a very interesting way for it to happen because I mean, if you're looking at Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what the attractiveness here is from the Jets area too. This is a guy who's going to be 40 years old. And as I say, I've done the math once, and one of these days when I get some time, I'm going to do the math again to show about how much quarterbacks start declining once they hit age 37 to 38. And the fact that once you become a 40-year-old quarterback, you are basically on borrowed time. It's tough to win. It's tough to win with one. Alan Lazard thinks that Rodgers is going to go to the Jets because he signed with the Jets as a free agent.
Yeah.
Saying that I want Brett. I want Aaron as my quarterback. I think he's 40 years old, and this is a Jets team that's young. This is a Jets team that I think was starting to find themselves a little bit last year. And some of the younger elements of that team, I think, was starting to coalesce and feeling a little bit more like they were a core group. Like, maybe we found this core that's going to take us to the top of the AFC in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And the weakness is at quarterback. They don't have the quarterback to take them to the top of the AFC. They got a good core, but Aaron Rodgers isn't the guy. This is, if you want to bring in Aaron Rodgers, it better be because you think you're a Super Bowl team this year.
Right.
And because you're not going to have him long. And he showed a deterioration in skills last year. So
yeah, he did. I don't think that is discussed enough. I think too many people are saying, oh, he lost his quarterback coach. He lost this. He lost that. He was dealing with an injury. He made a run at the end of the season, winning 4 games in a row to have that chance to make the playoffs in the final week. Well, I mean, they lost in the final week to a team that had won one time in Lambeau in like 30 years or something.
Yeah.
So, and he overall, he just did not play well. He did not elevate the players around him like he has always done in the past.
No, he didn't. And the other thing is, it was always their fault. This receiver didn't do what I expected him to do. That receiver didn't do what I expected him to do. It's their fault that I'm looking bad as a quarterback.
Right.
So, and Allen Lazard was part of that package last year. So, it's not like, he did have a down receiver group last year. But when you're building a young team, when you're trying to build a core that, a cohesive core that is going to be, that you identify as the center of your team for the next 5 years, that this is the part, this team is going to take me to the playoffs because I got these strong players all around the team. They're young, they're leaders. Aaron Rodgers isn't a leader either.
Yeah.
He's not going to give you any leadership abilities out of, the best thing he's going to do is he's going to, if you run a wrong route for him, he's going to either ignore you on the sidelines or give you one of his dirty looks or, if the Jets were a Super Bowl team, I'd say, okay, take a shot with him, but he's not. You got to find somebody who can
grow with your team,
grow with this core group.
Yeah.
That you have put together, that you've spent a lot of time putting together, but it's starting to work. I'm starting to see some better things out of the Jets. And to me, this is a big step backwards because you need a quarterback. And I know they tried to draft that quarterback with Zach Wilson, which was just a terrible. The last 2 quarterbacks they drafted have been terrible choices. Have not been the guys they needed to move forward with this team, with Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson.
Right.
But bringing in an overaged Aaron Rodgers is not going to fix that.
Right.
You're going too far the other way. It's not going to fix the problem with your team. So they needed to find a quarterback who could meld with this young core a lot better than what they're going to do. And I don't think Green Bay is going to get a first-round pick out of him either because I don't think he's anywhere near worth that. Now, no. Green Bay says they want a first-round pick. It sounds like Green Bay wants a compensation package like they would get for a quarterback in his prime.
Right, like what Broncos gave up for Russell Wilson or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which is
probably why the trade hasn't happened yet.
Right. Well, yeah, the Packers are going to dig in their heels as long as they can. Eventually, they're going to have to make the choice that they're going to have to move him because he's not going to play for them next year.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So they're going to get to a point where we got to get something out of him. We do have to get something back. We're not going to get a first-round pick back. There's a lot of talk right now. There's a lot of screaming back and forth, but eventually what you're going to see is the Packers relenting a little bit, and you're going to go down to the second-round pick, and Rodgers will go to New York, and New York fans will scream like crazy and say, hey, we got a quarterback that can – let's see how far we can go with this team, and they will be out of it. They might make the wild card round, and Rodgers is, that's about as far as I can see him getting that team.
Yeah, Pantera says probably give up a second, maybe 2 seconds. I think is what saying. I can see that 2 seconds maybe.
Yeah, so can I.
Pantera also, I wanted to comment on. React to this comment from Pantera. He's 40, but he was also a 38-year-old MVP. Well, I mean, Peyton Manning won MVP in 2013. I remember what he was in 2015. I know the Broncos won the Super Bowl that year, but he was washed up.
Oh, he was washed up. The Broncos won the Super Bowl in spite of Peyton Manning.
Yeah. I mean, Brock Osweiler was playing instead of him, and it took Osweiler playing awful in Week 17 for Manning to get his job back. Because Manning was healthy, did not start in Week 17, and went in because Osweiler was struggling so badly. And Osweiler, we know, he's not even in the league anymore. So
no,
that was Peyton Manning was at replacement level 2 years after winning the MVP. So the decline is not gradual with quarterbacks late in the 30s. That was your point when we started this conversation.
Exactly.
It's a huge decline once the decline starts.
Once the decline starts, it goes south very fast.
Yeah.
Take Tom Brady out of the equation, everybody else, it goes south fast. So don't expect MVP numbers out of Aaron Rodgers next year, no matter what. They put an impressive core in place for a quarterback to work with, but I don't see. Again, you have to have a quarterback who at least is not at the end of the road, still has abilities left. Everybody loses some hand-eye coordination as you get older. And even an athlete, even if it's just that touch, you're throwing the ball even a quarter or a third of a second later, maybe a quarter or a third of a second less accurate. That's enough to turn a reception into an interception in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's enough. The NFL is defined by quarter seconds. And that's the problem when you get a player who's older that you think, well, he's had a great career, but 40 years old, he's not the same guy. And it doesn't matter what you do. The hand-eye, the nerves do break down at some point. You don't get the instantaneous communication between your eyes and the rest of your body as far as what you need to do. And it's just that's science. That's how it works. So, and diet, workout, nothing else helps that. It's just there is a physical degradation that occurs.
And Tom Brady bucking the curve, I think, has led others to believe that somebody like Aaron Rodgers could do it too. And I mean, he is 40. He's made it past the threshold of where a lot of quarterbacks decline, 38, 39.
Right.
But other quarterbacks have as well. Brett Favre made it to 40.
Brett Favre was one of the outliers for a long time.
Yes.
Being a 40-year-old quarterback who actually took a team to the playoffs. He was the only 40-year-old quarterback to take a team to the playoffs for a long time.
For Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is not. I just don't think. I agree. I'm reiterating what we've said, that this is a 1-year thing for the Jets.
Yes.
That he's not going to be playing until he's 44, 45, like Tom Brady did. So this is a 1 year. We're going for it for the Jets, which is exciting because they have not really had the talent to go for it. And I know that fan base will be excited about it, but
Sure.
I'm leery that he's already declining. And Pantera brings up the point that at least Rodgers is healthy. Manning was not at the end of his career. That's true. But I just don't think Rodgers is going to be an MVP, even close to an MVP level quarterback in New York, and really wasn't last year either. So
no, he wasn't. Believe me, I watched him. He wasn't.
Yeah. And Tony has been sending a ton of comments in about the Jets receiving core. And I think maybe the biggest concern I have with the Jets is you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers. We both don't like how he's a diva, not a great leader. You're coming in, and I don't want to say he's going to poison the water there, but he's going to impact roster decisions.
Yes.
And off-season moves. And you're only going to have him for 1 year. I guess you can sign a bunch of guys to 1-year contracts. Did Alan Lazard get a 1-year contract? I'm not sure, but
I don't know.
It seems dangerous to.
It'll probably be a 2-year contract with the first year front loaded, and they'll go like that.
I just think it's dangerous to bring in a 40-year-old quarterback and then make him your GM basically. Which seems like could be the situation.
I think that's kind of what Rodgers wants, is an organization that's going to cater to him.
Yeah.
Which is why he came out of the darkness and said, okay, it's the Jets.
Would you like to go into the darkness for, a few days to make an important decision in your life? Think that would be helpful?
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't think it would be. I think it's one of the many ways that he comes across as a diva, that in order to make this decision, he had to, I don't know, what he rented out a cave or something. I don't know what he did.
I don't know.
But so
maybe he found a wise man who wanted to take a vacation, so he rented out his cave for, kind of like was a Airbnb. I'll take your cave, and
maybe he went camping where Chris was a few weeks ago.
Oh, that could be too, right?
If Chris was in close to any darkness, but he didn't have any Wi-Fi, so I mean that's
yes, exactly. Well, these days, not having Wi-Fi is darkness. I mean,
Did he have any indoor plumbing in his cave?
Yeah, I know.
That would be an important question for Tom, as he detailed last week.
Absolutely.
Need to have indoor plumbing.
To have indoor plumbing. As I said, very, very smart people. Many, 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 many moons ago, very smart people called the Romans. And the Romans did a lot of great things. And one of the things the Romans did was figure out how to move water, plumbing. And ever since then, you don't need to go anywhere without inside plumbing. Why would you give that up? So, no. I don't camp without inside plumbing. Which probably is just, takes away from the whole point. But that's fine with me, too. I'm good with that.
Well, we got about 15 minutes left in the show. We have a lot of comments rolling in. That's great, guys. Keep sending them in as we finish up today's episode. We're going to talk some Falcons today, and we have a few different questions I think that we could get to. I want to start with another comment from Pantera that he wanted Hardman in Atlanta, and this is kind of a transition from the Jets to the Falcons because Hardman ended up Mecole Hardman ended up signing with the New York Jets. I think that's who Pantera means.
Right. Yeah. Mecole Hardman. Right.
Yeah. And ended up signing with the Jets. And that's kind of, I don't know if that was a Aaron Rodgers request or not, but I
think that was a signing that reflects the fact that they expected to get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So,
and I think other teams, at least in the media, other teams were saying that, the Steelers should sign Hardman. The Falcons should sign Hardman. There were lots of articles being written about how he would fit in a lot of different places. And yeah, I think he would have been a nice fit in Atlanta.
Right.
Lamade Zaccheaus is still available too. I wonder if Atlanta has any interest in bringing him back. Another guy that I think could be useful for a lot of different teams.
Yeah, that's a weird one there because, Zaccheaus isn't the greatest receiver, but he did give the Falcons some production last year. And this is a team that still needs production out of receiver. This is a team that's still shorthanded when it comes to wide receiver. So seeing Zaccheaus still sitting out there is a little surprising to me. And we'll see what happens as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah.
I would expect Zaccheaus is probably going to come back to the Falcons. I think he's still young enough to make an impact with somebody. As I say, he's not going to be your number one, not going to be your number two, but he's a guy who can get on the field and make a catch for you. He's a guy who can still stretch the field. Guy still got amazing speed.
Yeah, that's why I think he would be useful depth piece for the Falcons, and
right,
he could be a target for a lot of different teams, especially as we move, later into free agency. Anybody who's available really becomes a bargain because these guys are itching to get a job, and you can land a guy for pretty cheap, and maybe that's what the Falcons are hoping to do with Zaccheaus. But another team could swoop in and be thinking the same thing. So we'll keep an eye on Zaccheaus. Yeah. Quiz 1972 George, I think a first-time commenter asks us, with a new tight end coming in from New England, do you think Pitts will play more wide receiver? I don't think so, George. Arthur Smith loves two tight end sets, and I think having two tight ends that could start pretty much on any other team is really what he wants and what the type of formations and offense that he wants to run.
Right. This is actually playing into Arthur Smith's hands. Because this is when he was most effective in Tennessee, was when he had Jonnu Smith, down there. Anthony Ferguson was playing, and he was able to do a lot of things with two tight end sets. So no, Pitts is not going to play wide receiver. Pitts is going to be a receiving tight end. Jonnu Smith is going to be more of a traditional tight end. Smith is going to give, and I said this last week, Smith still gives a team a lot of, the last time Arthur Smith had him, he used Jonnu Smith for a lot of short yardage areas. Smith generated a lot of first downs, generated a lot of 8 touchdowns, out of the red zone as a tight end. This Smith is going to be your more traditional tight end, with letting Pitts work the slot, work the seam of the field a little bit more.
We have a question from Todd as well, guys. I'm late to the show, but I've got a question. Your reaction on comments from former GM of the Falcons saying Terry don't make decisions, Coach Smith does. Was that Thomas Dimitroff? Asking Todd if he can comment back. Because, Dimitroff was the GM for the Falcons for a long time. I don't know what other former GM for the Falcons would have had a comment, but I didn't see any comments from Dimitroff. I did see something from ESPN, Seth Walder, who is just an analytics writer. He's an analyst. I don't mean to put down his job. He's an analytics writer. I don't think he had an executive position in the NFL ever, but he was highly critical of the Falcons transactions this offseason. And I was a little taken back by that. Did you see these comments from
No, I didn't.
Walter? Basically, he squeezed in what he didn't like about the Falcons offseason into what's the character limit on Twitter? 240 characters?
Yeah, something like that now, yeah.
So he says, Falcons have had a pretty rough offseason so far, in my opinion. Overpaid Lindstrom, brought back McGarry despite past pro struggles, overpaid Anumata, paid sticker price for Bates when safety market was cheap, rolling with Ritter Heineke instead of thus far trying to land Lamar.
Okay, well, Dimitroff had his shot, though. I mean, he was in the position. He was the reason why the Falcons, talk about overpaying. He's the reason why the Falcons ended up in salary cap hell. Overpaying Julio Jones. And I know that's probably Arthur Blank's fault too. But kicking Matt Ryan's contract down the road every couple of years. I get some of the things, but again, Thomas Dimitroff, he's had his chance at the job. It's, go ahead and give your opinion, but you had your shot to do this, and it didn't work. You couldn't pull the Falcons out of it. So I don't know. It just seems like sour grapes to me. Just,
Well, that wasn't from Dimitroff. That was from Seth Walter.
Oh, from Seth Walter.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, he might be right, but he might be wrong. I don't know. I don't think the Falcons have done a bad job this offseason. I think they've done a pretty good job of getting guys in the positions. They do not have an edge rusher yet, but they have strengthened the interior of their defensive line with Onimata. Lindstrom was destined for a big payday. He played his way into a big payday. McGarry, no, not a great pass blocker, but again, you're hoping that he continues to develop as he did as a run blocker this year. So, there are certain advantages to what the Falcons have done. I think the Falcons have had a fairly good offseason. I like what they've done. Jonnu Smith, I think, is a great acquisition. I think he's flying under the radar, but I think you're going to see a huge difference in the offense just with Jonnu Smith on the field, along with Pitts.
Yeah, I did a quick Google search on Thomas Dimitroff, Terry Fontenot, and I wasn't able to find anything. But Todd says Thomas went on a podcast, says Coach Smith makes all the decisions, and Terry pretty much does nothing. I don't know how Thomas Dimitroff would know that.
No.
So
I really don't
I
either.
wouldn't put much stock in what Dimitroff has to say about really anything on the Falcons at this point.
He's on the outside looking in. As I say, that's the thing with Dimitroff. Anything you hear him say is going to be sour grapes. So it's too bad.
Brian joining in, he says we haven't overpaid. I think he's talking about with the offensive linemen. That's nonsense. That was the opinion of Seth Walter. And yeah, I think Seth brought up some interesting points about, should the Falcons go after Lamar Jackson? I think if you were going to go after Deshaun Watson a year ago, then yeah, you should be in on Lamar Jackson. The Jesse Bates thing, they got a good player. My concern is the position. Did you have to pay top dollar to satisfy that? But the weird thing to me, the weird take he had was overpaying the offensive lineman. I guess he's right that McGarry's not great in pass protection, but he improved a lot in run blocking,
yes.
And that's kind of how you're building your team. Arthur Smith wants to be a tight end running team that you can build with McGarry, and Chris Lindstrom is one of the best guards in the league.
He's turned into one of the best guards in the league. Right. He's earned his paycheck.
Yeah. So, if you're one of the best of your position, you're going to set the record for, highest paid player at your position. That's just kind of the way it is.
That's the way it is these days.
So
you set the market. If if you're at that point in your career, you're at the top of your career, you're at the top of your position. Yeah, you set the market. So the offensive the right guard market has been set. And Lindstrom's the right guy to set it. So
a few more comments I want to get to, maybe a couple more questions. Let's go with this one first. Comment from Tony. I truly believe that there are 2 Atlanta Falcons players that will contribute heavily this upcoming season that people are sleeping on, Ritter and Hayward. Stay tuned. I mean, that would be huge for the Falcons if both of those players were kind of sleeper picks and did well.
And Tony, I would agree with Hayward. I think he's definitely somebody who I want to see come back strong this season. So I'm looking forward to that one. But do you sign Jesse Bates if you feel like you're confident in what Hayward's going to bring back to Hayward's a corner, but right. I think the Jesse Bates signing works out pretty well. I think they needed a safety. I think that was the weakness in their secondary was at safety. So I have no problem with the Jesse Bates signing. I have no problem with them making a big splash with a signing.
Yeah.
This is what you went through last year to be able to do. So you identified your guy and you brought him in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. To a certain extent, it really doesn't matter what they're paying these guys, if they've overpaid them or not. They have the salary cap space. They have the needs. They need to go out and address the needs with the money that they have. And they're trying to do that. You can't fault a team that does that, in my opinion. And that's
right.
What the Falcons are trying to do this offseason. George, a little defense for Thomas Dimitrov, says he got us to the Super Bowl. Not his fault. We didn't close the deal. Yeah, I don't want to
discuss that before. We've gone down that road.
Talk about that game again. But George asks, would you take a chance on Jalen Carter at number 8?
You have to talk to Jalen Carter. Now, this is the thing that we don't know about these pro day workouts and the combine, and I think are the most valuable parts of pro day and combine, is when your staff, when your coaches, and general manager, everybody gets a chance to talk one-on-one with these guys. Take them into a room, talk privately. You have to talk to Jalen Carter and get an evaluation of his mindset. Because obviously he has the skills to be the player that could be a definite force on the Falcons in 2023. Can be a definite force on anything in 2023. But you got to talk to him. You got to find out where his head is at now. Is he ready to mature? Has he learned from what, this terrible, tragedy that he was a part of? You got to find out where his headspace is. If it's not where you think it is, no, then you got to let him go. If you think that, mentally he's going to get back into approaching the game, work out, get himself back into shape, get rid of that extra 9 pounds, whatever, and get back into the kind of player that we've seen him in college, then maybe you do. I don't know. From the outside looking in, it's difficult. It's going to depend on their evaluation of him as they talk to him going into the draft. So physically, yeah, he's got the tools. I mean, he's going to be a hell of a player, and I think most teams would thrill to have him at where the Falcons sit. Mentally, you got to find out where he is mentally.
I think Todd brings up a good point that I would like to echo, that you're trying to build a culture, you're trying to build a winning formula, and character has been stressed as part of the formula for that, and Carter doesn't really satisfy that. So yeah, you would have to if you're going to consider him, you have to do exactly what Tom just described and really vet him before spending a really high draft pick on him.
And Todd, that's what I've been saying the last couple of weeks. Character, see, with me, character counts. And I haven't seen the character out of him that makes me want him on my football team. However, I'm not in the room talking one-on-one with him, talking with him as a coach to a player, as a general manager to a player, saying that I'm going to be staking the next 4 or 5 years on your production, on your character. So, what can I expect? I'm not in that room. What he's shown me, no, I don't want him. But again, as I say, I'm not in the room to vet him.
Well, we're just about out of time, or we are out of time. So I want to say to everybody, thanks so much for all the comments and questions. The interaction is amazing. We love it every single week. Today's show was brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use our promo code ASU when you sign up. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money there, and you can support our show. You can also follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. Give us a like on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. That there's more than just our show. There's all kinds of Georgia sports and specifically Atlanta sports covered on the channel. So check out all of that during the week, in between our episodes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to have everybody here. Love seeing all the comments and all the suggestions. And, great. Thank you for spending time with us on your Saturday afternoon. Have a great week.